Hi, my name is Sylvia Arismendez, mom of Jonah Arismendez. I was 33 weeks pregnant when Jonah was diagnosed with CDH, Congenital Diaphragmatic Hernia on the right side. At the time, I had just been in there for a somewhat of a routine appointment. Jonah, as my fifth child, it was my first time that I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. So I had to go in for an appointment. We were kind of on the fence about going. It was going to be about $1,000 just for us to go with the insurance to go to the specialized appointment. And we decided to go. And when we went and they were doing the ultrasound to see how he was doing, that was when they saw that he had the congenital diaphragmatic hernia. So at the time, they couldn't tell me much. They showed me a picture of the lining underneath his lungs, not completely there, and his organs drifting up into his chest, compressing his heart and his lungs. I did not know what to think at the time. I had never seen anything like that. The word hernia did not seem so bad, so I was hoping it wasn't so bad. My husband, who is a PA, a physician assistant, wasn't with me. So I was kind of eager to call him and see, okay, so what is this diagnosis and how bad is it? So they told me I would need to go for more testing, and after more testing, they would be able to see how bad it was. They asked if I needed a moment, and I said yes. And so I called my husband at that time, and I said, this is what our son has, and what is it? And he stayed quiet for a little bit and was almost in a state of shock a little. And he said it wasn't good. And it depended on how bad it was. But that it did not sound very, very good or hopeful. So actually the first part of this journey, my husband seemed to take it harder than I did. And it switched later on when I began to understand exactly what was entailed. So eventually we went and got an MRI done and was told he only had 7% of his left lung and no right lung. We were then eventually scheduled to talk with the neonatologist at the hospital, and they told us that Jonah should go into respite care, which is basically making him comfortable until he goes. Of course, after hearing that, I was very upset and couldn't understand why. I asked if I could speak to the surgeon, and the neonatologist said there wasn't a point because he made all the decisions. I knew then I needed a second opinion, maybe even a third opinion. I started doing my research, and here in Texas, I began to see that many of the hospitals that deal with CDH are in Houston. So we had set up appointments to go there. And before we went there, we were told to check out CHOSA, the Children's Hospital of San Antonio. So we did our research. We went out there and we spoke to the surgeon, and the surgeon automatically gave me more hope and said, if Jonah is meant to be here, then the team would do everything in their power to make sure that Jonah would make it, that they would try everything possible. And when there wasn't anything left to do, then at that time they would let me know. So the journey from there was still difficult, still tests to do, many, they had to check in on the baby quite a bit to make sure he was okay, check in on me because there was more amniotic fluid in my belly. And so because there was more amniotic fluid, I experienced a lot of contractions, and I was bigger with him than with any of my other children. So the day came. Initially, I was scheduled for a regular birth, vaginal birth, and then they decided that C-section would be best to ensure that everybody that was needed to be there would be there. I went in, didn't know what to expect, but 30 to 40 people were in the room. some students, something that I obviously signed off on, but I definitely wanted to make sure that students were allowed in the room for something that was so rare, so that way they knew how to deal with it in the future. It was unlike any of my other births. Once they took Jonah out, they took him away, and I actually didn't see him until that evening. I later learned that they intubated him right away, allowed a pastor to baptize him just in case, and then he was put on ECMO. Jonah was on ECMO for 6 days. On day 7, he had his corrective surgery. Later, we found out that during that time, he had over 30 seizures, and he experienced a large frontal right stroke in his brain. I remember asking how that would affect him. I wasn't given much answers. They really didn't know. They couldn't say. They said some babies are affected quite a bit, others they're not. So we were in the hospital for 4 months. During that time, his right lung was able to inflate. His left lung was still very small. I remember them saying that it would likely never function. We sent it out to our prayer warriors, let them know, what the doctors were saying, and to pray that that lung would begin to work. And it is now functioning, and almost as big as his right lung now. So 4 months he was in the hospital. He is now home. He is only on the vent now as needed. He still has a G-tube, and we're currently in the process of getting him hopefully decannulated soon, which is removing his trach, because he's doing so well. And he's crawling. He's 17 months old now. And because of the experience, I actually wrote a book called The Sign of Jonah, a story of hope and miracles, because I wanted people to know that babies with CDH are resilient. They're resilient. There is hope, and to constantly fight for your baby. Because it's so rare, I don't think everybody knows exactly how to handle the situations with the babies. Each case is very different. I understand that, but it is important to vocalize what your expectations are for the CDH baby, and to learn along the way. I did research daily because I wanted to know the language to use. There is a lot of training that goes on with parents and taking their babies home, but it's all worth it. And our baby is more than a joy, and to our other 4 children as well. And we couldn't have hoped for a better outcome. Thank you.